Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the September Economic Development and Industrial Corporation of Boston Board meeting. At this time, the Boston Planning and Development Agency is continuing to host public meetings in a virtual setting for the health, safety, and accessibility of Boston residents. For more information and updates, visit bostonplans.org. The Open Public Meeting Law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications, at Xfinity Channel 24, RCN Channel 13, and Verizon Fios Channel 962. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/cable. To begin the meeting, I will take a roll call of the members. Ms. Downs.
Present.
Mr. Monahan.
Present.
Dr. Landsmark.
Present.
Mr. Miller.
Present.
And I, Priscilla Rojas, am present. Okay. First item on the agenda, request authorization for the approval of the minutes of the August 19th, 2021 meeting. A motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs.
Aye.
Mr. Monahan.
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Item number 2, request authorization to execute a construction contract with Newport Construction Corporation for the purposes of providing roadway and streetscape improvements to Northern Avenue within the Raymond Elflynn Marine Park in an amount not to exceed $2,547,293.41. Laura.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. I'm glad to be representing the EDIC today. Specifically, I'm here to request authorization to execute a construction contract with Newport Construction Corporation for the Northern Avenue Streetscape and Mobility Project within the Raymond Elflynn Marine Park in Boston. As you may recall, Northern Avenue is being redesigned to introduce sustainable modes of transportation and to better accommodate the stakeholders within the marine park. The work includes resetting the existing curbing and reconstructing the sidewalks along Northern Ave to integrate sidewalk-level bicycle lanes with accessible ramps and walkways and bus stops. As authorized by the board on November 14th, 2019, the engineering firm STV Incorporated prepared construction bid documents for the streetscape reconstruction in compliance with Mass General Law, Chapter 3039M. And as authorized by the board on April 15th, 2021, the project was competitively and publicly bid in July. 4 bids were received, opened, and read aloud on August 20th, and the lowest eligible and responsible bidder was Newport Construction for an amount of $2,547,293.41. All required documents were properly submitted. And STV, as the engineer of record who produced the bid documents, has reviewed the submitted bids and recommends award to Newport as the lowest qualified bidder. This project has been appropriately budgeted in the agency's FY22 capital budget with funding from the City of Boston. Therefore, we are requesting that the director be authorized to enter into this contract with Newport. If approved, work is expected to begin as early as this fall, prior to the winter construction moratorium, with completion due before summer of next year. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them at this time.
Great, thank you, Laura. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? All right, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs.
Aye.
Mr. Monahan.
Aye.
Landsmark.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you, Laura. Item number 3, personnel. David.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Director Golden, Madam Secretary. I have several EDIC items with details listed in your board memos. There are 2 appointments. Karen Chavez, Planner 1 in planning with an effective date of September 20th, and Maggie Pitts-Dilly, a title counsel in the Office of the General Counsel with an effective date of October 4th. There were 2 employment service contracts, Katiana Anglade and Andre Aquino, both in the Office of Workforce Development with effective dates of September 18th. There's 1 status change with details in your board packet, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, David. Any questions or comments from the board? Right, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
And that's the end of our EDIC meeting. So I need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I move we adjourn this very succinct meeting.
Second.
Okay, roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Meeting adjourned. Okay. Let's move on to the Bpda portion. So thank you for joining the September Boston Redevelopment Authority Board meeting. At this time, the Boston Planning and Development Agency is continuing to host public meetings in a virtual setting for the health, safety, and accessibility of all Boston residents. For more information and updates, please visit bostonplans.org. The Open Public Meeting Law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications at Xfinity Channel 24, RCN Channel 13, and Verizon Fios Channel 962. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/cable. I will take a roll call to begin this meeting. Ms. Downs?
Present.
Mr. Monahan?
Present.
Dr. Landsmark?
Present.
Mr. Miller?
Present.
I, Priscilla Rojas, am present. Okay, so let's switch over to the agenda. Give me 1 second. Okay, item number 1, request authorization for the approval of the minutes of the August 19th, 2021 meeting. A motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Item number 2, request authorization to schedule a public hearing on October 14th at 5:30 p.m. or at such a time and date deemed appropriate by the director to consider the plan development area, development plan for plan development area number 130, Nexus at the Alston Innovation Corridor, 250 through 280 and 305 Western Avenue, and the zoning map amendment, and to consider the proposed project as a development impact project. A motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Item number 3, request authorization to schedule a public hearing on October 13th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. or at such a time and date deemed appropriate by the director to consider the proposed amended and restated development plan for 100 Hood Park Avenue or Hood Park Drive addition within the plan development area number 51 Hood Park, and to consider the proposed project as a development impact project. Motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Item number 4, request authorization to schedule a public hearing on October 14th, 2021 at 5:50 p.m. or at such a time and date deemed appropriate by the director to consider the proposed 2021 Massachusetts General Hospital Institutional Master Plan, and to consider the proposed master plan as a development impact project. A motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Item number 5, request authorization to schedule a public hearing on October 14th, 2021 at 6 p.m. or at such a time and date deemed appropriate by the director for the Phase 5 building F5 development plan within plan development area number 94 Bartlett Place, Washington Street, and Bartlett Street in Roxbury. Motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Item number 6, Board of Appeal. Jeffrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Secretary Paul Hamus, Director Golden. Before you tonight are 50 petitions prepared by agency staff for transmittal to the Board of Appeals. These recommendations will cover the board's remaining September meetings and the first 2 in October. be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, great. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, the motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote, Ms. Downs.
Aye.
Mr. Monahan.
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 7 has been removed. So item number 8, request authorization to petition the Boston Zoning Commission to adopt the Coastal Flood Resilience Zoning Overlay District and map, Article 25A and associated amendments to Article 80 and Article 3-1A to support the resilience of development projects to coastal flood events through the application of the Bpda's Coastal Flood Resilience Guidelines for projects subject to Article 80 large and small project review. Chris.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Secretary Polhemus, and Director Golden. I'm Chris Bush. I serve as Assistant Deputy Director for Climate Change and Environmental Planning. Before you today for authorization to petition the Zoning Commission to adopt a Coastal Flood Resilience Zoning Overlay, Article 25A, and related map and associated amendments into the code. Next slide, please. Since the issuance of Climate Ready Boston in 2016, the Bpda has been working to advance the climate resilience objectives of that plan, including the promotion of adapted buildings that will function to limit damage and displacement related to a changing climate. Among the most significant climate risks facing Boston is the danger to residents and property from coastal flooding, which is predicted to increase over time with rising seas and more intense storm events. To address this risk, Climate Ready directed the Bpda to develop design guidelines as well as a zoning overlay district to promote coastal flood resilience for development projects in vulnerable areas of the city. Next slide, please. In 2019, the Bpda developed a coastal flood resilience design guideline document for new construction and building retrofits, as well as recommendations for a flood resilience zoning overlay district. The design guidelines assist property owners in understanding their vulnerability to current and future flood events and provide a best practices toolkit for flood resistant design measures for a number of building types. After the adoption of the design guidelines by the Bpda board in September of 2019, Bpda staff have been working with a legal consultant to develop the zoning recommendations into the coastal flood resilience zoning overlay. And I'll cover some of the primary provisions of the article at this time. Next slide, please. First are the purpose and objectives. These are also referenced within the guidelines. Those are promoting resilient planning and design and providing consistent standards for the review of projects. Promoting co-benefits of sustainable design that address multiple climate impacts such as urban heat island as well as increased precipitation. Advancing adaptation strategies that are future looking and draw on the best current practice for long-term resilience, and encouraging design that's responsive to the unique conditions of the Boston building typology, also responding to district scale plans that look to protect broader reaches of vulnerable neighborhoods and also enhance the public realm. Next slide, please. So the overlay will apply to areas of the city that could be inundated during a major storm event known as a 1% chance flood with 40 inches of sea level rise. Based upon climate modeling, we expect that 40 inches of sea level rise around 2070, which is within the usable lifespan of the most buildings that are currently undergoing Bpda review. That 40-inch inundation area is also already integrated into our Bpda zoning viewer, representing these flood extents and flood elevations. This overlay also represents areas of flooding beyond the existing FEMA flood maps. Those FEMA flood maps are based upon historic storm conditions, not future conditions like the overlay. Next slide, please. With regard to applicability, all projects subject to large and small project review under Article 80 will undergo resilience review as a new component of review. Project proponents will have to address how their projects respond to the Coastal Flood Resilient Design Guidelines. And this process will be overseen and administered by Bpda staff. We've hired a new senior architect for this very purpose. Next slide, please. There are also, within the overlay, dimensional and use standards to facilitate the application of these design guidelines. Just to get into some of the specific provisions, there'll be a sea level rise design flood elevation, which will establish a minimum elevation for the lowest floor for residential uses and floodproofing elevation for non-residential uses. Next slide, please. There are also limitations on use below that flood elevation. For health safety purposes, uses beneath the elevation are limited to access structures such as stairs, flood prevention measures, storage, and parking, and these provisions are consistent with FEMA flood prevention standards. Next slide, please. To promote the elevation of occupiable space, projects undergoing resilience review will have their height measured from 2 feet above the flood elevation rather than at grade, which is what current zoning requires. Next slide, please. And projects will have allowances to extend into side yards, rear yards, front yard setbacks for structures needed for vertical circulation, such as stairs and ramps that may be necessary to get from a lower surrounding grade to a higher first floor elevation. There are also allowances for side and rear yard encroachments for new structures to house mechanical systems to ensure those systems and utilities are not located in basements or below that flood elevation. And also to maintain usable gross floor area, there will be exclusions for structures needed for vertical circulation and areas devoted to flood protection measures. There will also be updates to Article 80 to integrate resilience review into large and small projects. Updates as well to Article 31A, the special purpose overlay district provisos of our zoning code to establish resilience overlay districts. Next slide, please. With respect to public process, this really began back with the development of the design guidelines and the zoning recommendations in 2019. As part of that process, we held focus groups with practitioners in the legal, design, and development communities. We also held open houses in each of the affected waterfront neighborhoods for residents and stakeholders. With respect to the development of the draft Article 25A language, we had that posted for public question and comment from mid-December 2020 until February 12th, 2021. We also held 2 virtual public meetings, which were very well attended with over 160 attendees. We received about 12 comment letters and emails, and based upon that feedback, we posted an updated version of the draft on August 24th of this year. So with that, the recommendation is to have the director be authorized to petition the Zoning Commission to adopt the coastal flood zoning overlay and related updates. Happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from the board?
Clearly, this is work that needs to be done. The question is inevitably going to arise as to whether we have guidelines as to what any of this might cost individual building owners or people who may be impacted by these changes. Do we have, or are we in the process of developing any guidelines of that type?
Yeah, we've not, thank you for that question. We've not had any assessment of what the costs are for these floodproofing elevation components. You know, we have had as part of our Article 37 resilience checklist, these design flood elevations and project proponents responding to these resilient design measures for a few years now. So the development design community has been really socialized through the resilience checklist to this at this point. You know, to my knowledge, we've not heard back from project proponents as to this being an undue burden. But something we can definitely look into. I think particularly as we look to advance this for smaller projects, if we are getting into single family, 3-family, townhouse typologies, certainly the impact financially be more significant. So in doing that, I think we need to have you know, neighborhood conversations about how best to advance these types of resilience measures, being very sensitive to those types of cost considerations. And I think that's a very important point that we need to build into that assessment.
Chris, thank you for this work. This map covers such a large area of Boston. Can you talk about the predicted frequency of this type of flooding event and the number per year that the city is going to be experiencing? And will this render some areas not really habitable at some point? That's my question.
Yes, thanks for that. So this map represents areas that we anticipate to be flooded with what's termed a 1% chance storm event. So a storm event of a size and magnitude that would have a 1% chance of occurring in any given year. Those two coastal storm events we had back in 2018, those were right about at the 100-year threshold. So we determined that, you know, from a policy standpoint, that 1% event, 1% chance event is something currently used by FEMA. It's been well sort of socialized as sort of a threat risk hazard that's been out there. So we move forward with that 40 inches of sea level rise, which again is something that we anticipate, you know, that would occur during the usable lifespan of most buildings where we are reviewing. You know, right now, it was a corollary to this. We've been conducting coastal flood resilient studies of all the waterfront neighborhoods. This is being led by the Environment Department, getting a better understanding of flood vulnerabilities and pathways throughout all the neighborhoods along Boston Harbor, and getting an understanding of when and where action needs to be taken. So a lot of that planning work is wrapping up at this time. And we really need to be moving into how to design and implement actual projects. A few of those being advanced through federal and state grant funds. As part of that analysis, there have been some locations where we see you know, potential for, I hate to use the term retreat, but sort of adaptive reuse of some of these areas of waterfront that are low, that have the potential for repeat damage over time. So it is something that is part of the conversation and part of the analysis that's being done on this neighborhood by neighborhood basis.
Thank you.
Great. Additional questions or comments?
I have a question, Madam Chair. Chris, have you been part of any discussions, obviously, if the mechanical rooms have to be taken out of subgrade where they typically are, and put on floors that are typically used to rent, that's less space in the business, in the building. So have there been discussions on allowing additional height because of some of the rentable space is going to be taken away?
Yeah, I think that's built into the language of the zoning draft at this point. So if those mechanical systems are relocated, those would not count against a usable square footage. So those types of utility systems rooms would not be included as part of that. Again, there are also allowances for extensions out into side yards, backyards for those systems as well, if there are limitations for some reason with respect to building height. And height will also be measured from a different dimension for these projects as well, be measured from that design flood elevation rather than at grade. So we're not requiring property owners to potentially lose a story or floor off the top of their building running into the height dimensional standards.
So I think I heard you. I get the square footage question, but if the, you know, building height is X on a new building or an existing building, and you know, space is taken away, I get it, you're not going to count that square footage. But what about the height?
The height, I believe, you know, height is measured to the, I guess, ceiling of the last sort of occupiable floor. So my understanding is there's about a third of space currently on any rooftop area that can accommodate rooftop mechanicals. So I think that's built into the zoning language currently.
Yeah, that's typically for cooling towers, et cetera, but all your electrical, all your transformers and your switch gear and all of that typically is not on the roof. I've seen it anywhere from the 13th floor to, you know, places like that. But I'm just curious if it's going to take up a whole floor that would be rented, is that additional going to be allowed or is it being discussed?
Yeah, I think that's something we would need to discuss, you know, in terms of how height might be evaluated with regard to if mechanicals were that significant that they were taking up a whole floor and there was no other alternative for, you know, locating those types of systems, you know, as part of sort of a larger footprint, let's say, as opposed to going up.
I know after Sandy, New York City allowed an additional 2 stories. If you relocated your mechanicals that were in the basement, you could put 2 more stories on top of the building if you wanted to. Thank you.
Great. Any additional questions or comments? All really great feedback. Okay, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote, Ms. Downs.
Aye.
Mr. Monahan.
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Right. Item number 9, request authorization to enter into a contract with Interboro Partners LLC for Plan Charlestown in an amount not to exceed $190,000. Anna.
Good afternoon. I'm Anna Callahan, a planner in the Downtown and Neighborhood Planning Department. I am joined by my colleague, Ted Schwartzberg, a senior planner who was here in May, to request authorization to advertise and issue a request for proposals in support of the Plan Charlestown initiative. I'm here today to request authorization for the Bpda to enter into a contract for consultant services to assist in the preparation of the Plan Charlestown Neighborhood Planning Initiative. Next slide. In partnership with the community and guided by Imagine Boston 2030 and other past planning efforts, Plan Charlestown is a comprehensive planning initiative that will produce a framework to predictably shape the future of the entire neighborhood of Charlestown. Plan Charlestown seeks to determine how to accommodate new contextually appropriate growth along the Rutherford Avenue corridor and in Sullivan Square while preserving the character of its existing residential areas. Next slide. Over the last year, the Plan Charlestown team has led conversations in the community about their needs, priorities, and visions for the future of their community. Through this work, the community identified 3 planning sub-areas within Charlestown: Sullivan Square, along the Rutherford Avenue corridor, and Charlestown's residential areas, including the original peninsula and the Lost Village. The consultant scope will enable our team to dive deeper within the community to discuss trade-offs for different scenarios for each of these sub-areas and help inform recommendations for the future of the entire neighborhood. Next slide. Despite the challenges of a global pandemic, our team has launched a robust community engagement process, including virtual public workshops, advisory group meetings, and a number of informal events. To augment these traditional engagement tools and expand our outreach, our team also launched an interactive mapping tool that replicates charrette-style exercises online. Next slide. The selected consultant, Interboro Partners, will support the Bpda in the following planning sub-disciplines: urban design, mobility, financial analysis, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. The selected consultant will work with the Bpda to complete the following tasks. In urban design, they will help advance the urban design framework and build out scenarios produced by Bpda staff in order to produce urban design guidelines and make zoning recommendations informed by community input. In mobility, they will review and help refine the multimodal network and development capacity proposed by the Bpda and past planning efforts. In consultation with the community, the consultant team will make recommendations for further mobility improvements. In financial analysis, they will work with Bpda staff to identify opportunities for public value creation created by zoning changes following the planning process. And in diversity, equity, inclusion, they will assess the impacts of how different demographic, racial, and ethnic groups will likely be affected by proposed planning recommendations and adjust accordingly. Next slide. Finally, we are delighted to recommend Interboro Partners for the Plan Charlestown Planning Initiative, as the selection team feels strongly that they, along with their sub-consultants, including transportation planning firm Nelson Nygaard, market analysis team RKG Associates, and landscape architecture firm Stoss, bring tremendous experience and complementary expertise to the Plan Charlestown team. The Bpda's Plan Charlestown team will continue to spearhead this planning initiative as we have built and continue to build relationships with the Charlestown community. The consultant team, led by Interboro Partners, will work closely with us to ensure that Charlestown's residents and their voices are brought to the forefront of this initiative. This concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna. Questions or comments from the board? Okay, a great initiative. Hearing and seeing none, motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 10, request authorization to execute a design services contract with GEI Consultants Incorporated to provide investigation, design, permitting, construction documents, and construction administrative services for the Shipyard Park Waterfront Maritime Infrastructure Improvements Project in the Charlestown Navy Yard, pursuant to the Bpda designer selection policy in an amount not to exceed $288,000. Laura.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm returning here today requesting authorization to execute a design contract, as you mentioned, Madam Chair, with GEI Consultants for the Shipyard Park Waterfront Maritime Infrastructure Improvement Project taking place in the Charlestown Navy Yard. This matter was last before you at the April 2021 board meeting when we received your authorization to solicit qualifications and fees for this design work. The project site consists of approximately half a mile of waterfront infrastructure and 2 acres of land. It includes Pier 3, Dry Dock 2, the Building 123 pump house, Pier 4, and the harbor walk adjacent to Pier 5. This area has recently been prone to sinkholes, which are caused by deterioration of the bulkhead, which then allows retained soils to wash into the harbor. Therefore, this design work will include a survey and engineering assessment of the area's seawall, bulkhead, pier, and wharf structures in order to identify all deficiencies and provide construction drawings for the conditions that need immediate repair. Plans and specifications will be prepared in accordance with Chapter 3039M of Mass General Law. The contract will also include permitting, bidding assistance, resident engineering services, and construction administration. In order to find a partner for this work, the Bpda issued a formal request for proposals in accordance with the Bpda's designer selection policy back in July. The process included outreach to minority-owned and women-owned firms, a virtual pre-submission conference, and an in-person site visit. We received 6 proposals in August and assembled a designer selection committee to review each submitting team's qualifications, experience, and proposed fees. Based on that review, the committee unanimously recommends the design contract be awarded to GEI Consultants. GEI has extensive experience with this type of maritime engineering and, for example, has provided on-call services to Massport for similar work since 2009. The total contract award is for $288,000, and this has been appropriately budgeted for in the agency's FY22 capital budget. Therefore, we request that the director be authorized to enter into this contract with GEI Consultants. If there are any questions, I'm happy to address them at this time.
Thank you, Laura. Questions or comments from the board? Okay, hearing and seeing none, the motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Laura. Okay, item number 11, request authorization to advertise and issue a request for proposals for the sale of the parcels X-26B and X-26-2 in the South End Urban Renewal Area known as the Frederick Douglass Peace Garden. Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Frederick Douglass Peace Garden is an approximately 8,500 square foot property in Lower Roxbury. Beginning in the 1990s, this property was the site of a garden created by the South End Lower Roxbury Open Space Land Trust. The garden was a cherished neighborhood resource for 2 decades. The Boston Redevelopment Authority granted and extended final designation several times to the land trust for the sale of the property, but the parcel was never conveyed and final designation expired in 2009. Following this, the BRA entered into a temporary license agreement with the Land Trust multiple times for the use of the parcel. In 2012, the Land Trust merged with the Boston Natural Areas Network, which in 2014 merged with the Trustees of Reservation. The last Bpda temporary license agreement for the use of the property expired in 2016 when the trustees declined to renew. In November 2019 and February 2020, the Bpda held 2 community meetings regarding the property. The property had fallen into disrepair, presented safety concerns to neighbors, and no longer functioned as a garden. Existing organizations that steward open space did not express interest in taking on its maintenance. Therefore, the Bpda proposed redevelopment of the property as multifamily housing, with a portion to be preserved as a garden in honor of the previous use. Community members agreed that the current state of the property was untenable, but also expressed concerns about the impact of removing existing open space. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Bpda put the project on hold. In January 2021, Bpda staff reopened the conversation with community stakeholders and agreed to release an RFP for garden uses only, no housing on the site. Since then, the Bpda staff have refined the RFP and stakeholders have explored available resources and partnerships for a potential RFP response. The objectives of the draft RFP are to honor the history of the original Frederick Douglass Peace Garden, to address climate and open space needs of the Lower Roxbury community, to create sustainable public open space that can be maintained in the long term, and to promote diversity and inclusion in the construction and use of the garden. We therefore request authorization to issue a request for proposals for open space and garden uses on the property. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Morgan. Questions or comments from the board?
Are there assurances that this open space will remain a community-oriented open space in perpetuity?
We are able to put an open space restriction through the land disposition agreement, which would restrict it to open space for 40 years after the South End urban renewal area is closed out.
Thank you.
Good question. Additional questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, motion is in order.
No, so moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you, Morgan. Morgan again. Item number 12, request authorization to adopt an amended and restated 555 Columbia Road demonstration project plan to reflect that a development objective for the 555 Columbia Road and 559 Columbia Road site will include the delivery of a core and shell for the Upham's Corner branch library by renewing authorization to acquire 559 Columbia Road by deed from DNI 5 Incorporated and to execute a purchase and sale agreement and any and all necessary documents with DNI in connection with the acquisition of the site, to advertise and issue a joint request for proposals for the redevelopment of the 555 through 559 Columbia Road, as well as for an operator for the City of Boston owned Strand Theater in Upham's Corner area of Dorchester, and to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the City of Boston concerning disposition of the RFP site, and to take all related actions. Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On December 17th, 2020, the Bpda board authorized the amendment of the Columbia Road demonstration project plan, which allowed the Bpda to acquire 559 Columbia Road and issue an RFP for the redevelopment of 555 through 559 Columbia Road in order to carry out the community's vision for the Upham's Corner Arts and Innovation District. This vision is the outcome of a robust and unique partnership between the members of the Upham's Corner community, the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative, Upham's Corner Main Streets, and an interdepartmental City of Boston planning team. The district will include the Strand Theater, the Upham's Corner Branch Library, smaller performance venues, sites for connected small businesses, and affordable housing with a significant portion set aside for visual and performing artists. Since the board's vote in December 2020, the City of Boston was unable to acquire the desired site for a much needed branch library, which is a key element of the vision for the Arts and Innovation District. After the completion of a test fit study and subsequent engagement with community stakeholders, the city determined that the most advantageous option to deliver the community's vision is to locate the library within a mixed-use development on the 555 through 559 Columbia Road site. Therefore, the city has asked the Bpda to seek a further amendment to the Columbia Road demonstration project plan to allow for the delivery of a core and shell for a dedicated location for the Upham's Corner Branch Library. The proposed amendment presents a unique opportunity to eliminate blight by leveraging private development to deliver the public asset of a library branch, as well as affordable housing and commercial space within the greater vision of a transformative arts and culture district. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Morgan. Question or comments from the board?
Just a question for public edification. What does this mean in relation to the current status of the Strand Theater?
So the RFP will include, or will also be seeking an operator for the Strand Theater. Proponents for the development of the site will have to bring a partner or some component of the proposal that will be that will operate the Strand Theater.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Lansmore?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you, Morgan. Okay, item number 13, request authorization to execute a memorandum of agreement with the City of Boston Public Works Department to transfer funds for the bid and installation of lighting for the Congress Street Bridge. Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Plans to light the 4-point channels Congress Street Bridge date back to 2000 when City of Boston and Light Boston, which is an organization advocating for the illumination of historic buildings and structures in the city, jointly issued the Diamond Necklace Report identifying the Congress Street Bridge as one of 25 downtown landmarks worthy of enhanced nighttime illumination. Based on this work, mitigation funds from the redevelopment of Atlantic Wharf, the article, Chapter 91 approval process, dedicated funds for the design and installation of lighting on this historic bascule bridge. The Bpda has been tasked with administering the development of the lighting design plan for the bridge. On December 18th, 2014, the Bpda board authorized the advertisement of a request for proposals for the design and installation of a lighting plan for the bridge. Due to lack of responses at that time, the RFP was reissued in 2016, and there were 4 responses received. On February 9th, 2017, the Bpda board authorized the director to enter into a contract with Heart Ramp Lighting Design, which was executed on March 21st, 2017. After that initial execution of the contract, Heart Ramp and their subconsultants, Jacobs Engineering, worked with the Bpda and Public Works Department staff to develop a conceptual lighting plan. The design was also informed by feedback from various stakeholders and the general public due to unforeseen structural conditions and the need to reconcile the community's preferred design with that of Public Works Department's roadway lighting standards. Completion of the design and bid for provisions of installation of the fixtures has been delayed, resulting in several extensions of the contract. However, over the past year, these issues have been resolved with Public Works and the City Street Lighting Division, allowing for the finalization of the design and planning for the bid and construction of the project. Since the Congress Street Bridge is a Public Works asset and the city's bridge engineers on staff within that department, both Bpda and Public Works have determined that Public Works is best suited to bid and install the bridge lighting. A memorandum of agreement with Public Works is now necessary to transfer the funds from Bpda to Public Works and allow for the bid and installation of the lighting program. The project is funded through Chapter 91 license fund from the redevelopment of Atlantic Wharf, currently held in escrow by the 4-Point Channel Operations Board. A prior board action authorized the director to receive funds from the Operations Board. There are also mitigation funds from the development of a 500 Atlantic Avenue dedicated to this project. The funding amount to be transferred to procure and install the bridge lighting system is $600,000. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from the board?
One quick question.
Sorry.
Will we put out through Chapter 149?
I'm not familiar with Public Works procurement, but that would be conducted through the Public Works Department, consistent with their standards and any state standards for procurement.
Got it.
And when do we think this work would begin and conclude?
Let's see here. I mean, it would likely take about 6 months to install. You know, if we work expeditiously with Public Works, we could have this out on the street later this fall and have it installed, I would hope, by next spring. Finally.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Very exciting. Questions or comments from the board? All right. Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye. Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Right, item number 14, request authorization to enter into a license agreement with Groovy Baby Music Incorporated for the temporary use of a portion of Shipyard Park in the Charlestown Newport for certain dates in September, October, and November of 2021. Lauren.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the Bpda is committed to activating the Charlestown Navy Yard, including Shipyard Park, with a variety of uses that are open to the general public. Proposed programming on this public land should be accessible to all and should facilitate a cohesive public realm that ensures connections within the Navy Yard and beyond. Groovy Baby Music Incorporated has submitted an application to add additional programming during the fall following the success of their summer class schedule. Groovy Baby produces outdoor music and movement classes with children and their parents around the greater Boston area, with one proposed location at Shipyard Park. The fall class program involves a fee. However, the classes are open to everyone regardless of their ability to pay. Classes are proposed to be held on Saturday mornings for 9 weeks with 3 45-minute sessions. The maximum number of registrants for each individual session would be 10 families. This license requires Groovy Baby to obtain all permits and licensing at their own expense, comply with all federal, state, and municipal law, codes, and ordinances, maintain oversight of any and all contractors, employees, or agents for conformance with rules and regulations, provide and maintain proper insurance coverage for proposed use with the Boston Redevelopment Authority named as additional insured over the term of the license. Staff proposes that Groovy Baby be charged 12.5% of their gross receipts for the classes at the Shipyard Park location. It's a rate consistent with the Shipyard Park activation uses and considers their free use as well. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? All right, hearing and seeing none, motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Right, item number 15. Request authorization to execute a second amendment to the ground lease with the Young Men's Christian Association of Greater Boston Incorporated for the use of Building 150 located in the historic monument area of the Charlestown Navy Yard. Anthony.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Director Golden, and members of the board. The Bpda and the YMCA of Greater Boston are parties to a long-term ground lease agreement for the use of Building 150 in the Charlestown Navy Yard. Building 150 is located at 150 3rd Avenue in the Charlestown Navy Yard and contains approximately 111,388 gross square feet. The existing ground lease commenced in 1991 and allows for the YMCA to operate nonprofit-oriented functions consistent with the YMCA mission and focusing on youth and family wellness, community food access, social justice, child care services, education, and similar services. The lease language contained within the original lease agreement is ambiguous in some cases and does not provide for clear rent calculation procedures. Further, reviews of available lease records have not yielded a definitive total project cost figure, which would have been established upon completion of the original tenant improvements, which occurred in 1993. The total project cost figure is a critical component of net refinance, net transfer, and net cash flow calculations, which are conditional revenue sources embedded within the lease. After discussing these issues with the YMCA, the Bpda is proposing to amend the lease agreement to establish the following points of mutual agreement. Number one, to incorporate into the lease the actual gross building area figure of 111,388, which measurement has been confirmed by Bpda staff. Number two, to restate for purposes of clarity the fixed rent rates and timelines established in the original lease, and to reconcile with tenant any discrepancies resulting from said restatement. Number 3, to incorporate into the lease a clear CPI calculation methodology to be used on a going forward basis. And the 4th item is to incorporate into the lease a total project cost figure of $19,474,000 to be used in the calculation of net transfer, net refinance, and net cash flow proceeds that may be triggered in the course of the remaining term of the lease. Please note that these changes are purely administrative and are not expected to impact or change the YMCA's operations in the Navy Yard at this time. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. Questions or comments from the board? All right, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 16, request authorization to issue a certification of approval in accordance with Article 80E, small project review of the zoning code. Approve the change in ownership of the proposed hotel project and project changes consisting of reduction in square feet and height and 68 hotel rooms to 31 hotel suite rooms located at 88 North Washington Street and to take all related actions. Sarah.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, Secretary Paul Hemus, and Director Golden. My name is Sarah Black, and I'm a Senior Project Manager in the Development Review Department here at the Bpda. We are pleased to provide an overview of the updates to the 88 North Washington Street project located in the West End. The project includes a new 30,533 gross square foot, 31 key 12-story hotel located at 88 North Washington Street, consisting of a first floor lobby and 11 levels of guest rooms. In March of 2017, the project was previously approved by the Bpda board, and in May of 2017, the project received approval by the City of Boston Zoning Board of Appeals. On August 13th, 2021, Boston Real Estate Collaborative LLC filed a project update with the Bpda, which provided information on a change in ownership as well as the project changes. The project changes included converting the construction from concrete to cross-laminated timber, reducing the gross square footage, reducing the number of stories in the building from 14 to 12. The height of the building will remain the same at 128 feet in total, but each story will have taller ceilings. And then reducing the number of hotel rooms from 68 to 31 rooms. On September 7th, 2021, the Bpda sponsored a public meeting to provide updates to the community on the project. And I'm happy to take any questions at this moment. We also have some members of the development team present to respond to questions as needed.
Okay, great, thank you. Questions or comments from the board?
I'm just curious to hear from the proponent what motivated this change.
I can speak on behalf of our team. Thank you, Dr. Landsmark. It's a great question. I mean, for us, it's really about sustainability at the forefront. We're actually doing a cross-laminated timber project near our offices in Roxbury right now. And in a building like a hotel where, you know, or any new construction for that matter in a really dense area like the West End, you know, the heat island effect that's created by people, especially in a hotel scenario where they're kind of just running their, you know, their air or their heat as much as they want. You know, for us, we're really looking at ways to combat that. So we're actually pursuing, you know, passive building practices to ensure that in an environment where people are using this stuff as much as possible, we're limiting the impact to the surrounding neighborhood as much as humanly possible. And kind of more on that, you know, steel is, for lack of a better phrase, kind of a thermal superhighway. And so when you're trying to build a building that's efficient as possible, steel creates sort of a thermal bridging that actually allows the outside air to penetrate the exterior walls of the building and into the core, and it ends up, you know, requiring a substantial amount of increased energy to actually to meet, you know, the required needs of the folks that are living in the building. And for us, you know, cross-laminated timber in itself is just a great way to take carbon that has been, continues to get recirculated in the atmosphere, and actually take that out of circulation. So the trees that go into the cross-laminated timber that will be used in the superstructure are actually at the end of their useful life in terms of their ability to absorb carbon from the atmosphere. So we're actually taking that out of circulation, which in turn kind of equates to taking a substantial amount of automobiles off the road for a substantial period of time. So, I mean, for us, it's really about creating a more pleasant interior environment and also creating larger spaces where, you know, in a post-COVID world, you might have families that might not necessarily want to go outside of their suite, you know, because they might be afraid or they might want to have more space for their kids. So this is kind of in response to, you know, aligning ourselves with the city's climate and resiliency guidelines, but also providing something new for folks who might be looking for something different as travel evolves. So I know that's a lot, but there's certainly been a bunch of thought that's gone into this thus far, and we're really excited about it. We hope to see more of it.
Well, I must admit, I asked initially more to find out about the implications, the financial implications of reducing the number of units, but your answer proved to be much more interesting. So I'm glad I asked, and thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry for going on a tirade, but we are certainly excited about it. I'm looking forward to working with our neighbors as this thing progresses.
Yeah, agreed. I appreciate the lesson in cross-laminated timber. That's super exciting and in different ways to, you know, for us to be on the lookout of these new technologies and approaches to building, especially in those high density areas. So, all right, any additional questions or comments?
I have a couple of questions, Madam Chair. So, Scott, I guess very direct question. Is it cheaper than steel or concrete?
It's not necessarily cheaper. It's more environmentally conscious. I mean, I'm sure you know what an impact actually creating steel does for the environment, in addition to more concrete that you'd see in a typical style of construction in this area and this scale. So for us, it's less of a cost-based approach, and it's more of a how can we build to be as least environmentally impactful as possible.
Yeah, I understand that answer, but the real question is it cheaper?
Is it cheaper from
steel or concrete? If you're going to do this, yeah, this square footage, this many stories.
Michael, I can answer the question.
Yeah, I'll let Brent chime in if he wants to.
The answer is on a materials basis, no, it's not cheaper, it's more expensive. But the time pickup that you get because of the way it's assembled makes up for some of that cost override. But at the end of the day, it's more expensive than. It's more expensive to purchase. I get the installation piece, but at the end of the day, whether we're an iron worker's connected iron or a laborer's pouring concrete, or this is showing up in a prefab manner, at the end of the day, is it cheaper? I'm not going anywhere with it. No, it's not. It's not. Okay. No, we hope that it's long run a better return, obviously, because of the sustainability and operating efficiency benefits that Scott started to outline. But no, it's not cheaper. And my second question, my trade, I'm an electrician, not a carpenter or an iron worker or a laborer that has a vested interest in this. But I read recently on many are concerned about, I think I heard you say two things, Scott. Is this milled lumber or is this manufactured, glued like the LV?
Glued, sir.
It is. So many are concerned about the flammability with the glue and so on and so forth. Trust me, I'm not saying one way or the other, but I just read an article that was interesting about many are concerned about this product.
I think that's a fair question, but for all intents and purposes, based on what we've been told by our supplier of our Lennox Street project over in Roxbury, it's a Canadian company, but from what we understand, under heat and flame and fire, this would actually perform better than steel, which actually would most often fail. This actually has what's called a char effect. And so the structural integrity of the CLT members actually should perform just as well or better than a steel application. This is from what we've been told in working with the manufacturers and suppliers. So.
And obviously we have a fully licensed structural engineer.
Right.
I'm sure, yeah, you wouldn't be putting this up if you didn't have all that, but.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Good
sir.
questions.
Thank you.
Awesome. Additional questions or comments? Cool. Hearing, seeing none, motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Cool. Roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs.
Aye.
Mr. Monahan.
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Good luck with that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, item number 17, request authorization to issue a scoping determination waiving the requirement of further review pursuant to Article 80, Section 80B-5.3D of the zoning code for the construction of 3 buildings consisting of 191 residential units, including 29 IDP units, 25 home ownership and 4 rental, new open space, and approximately 47 on-site vehicle parking spaces located at 75 and 78 Willow Court and 60 Baker Court, to recommend approval to the Board of Appeal for necessary zoning relief subject to the continuing VRA design review, and to take all related actions. Sarah.
Thank you again, Madam Chair, members of the board, Secretary Paulimis, and Director Golden. We are pleased to provide an overview of the proposed Willow Baker development project located in Dorchester. As stated, the project is a mixed-use development located on a 1.3-acre site consisting of 3 new buildings with a total of approximately 181,398 square feet and 191 residential units. The residential units include 99 homeownership condo units and 92 rental units, and there are a total of 46 parking spaces on site as well as new open space. I will offer a few remarks about the regulatory review and then turn the presentation over to the development team to review the project program, and then we'll assist with any questions you might have. Willow Baker LLC submitted a project notification form on August 7th, 2020. An IAG meeting was then held on October 6th, followed by a public meeting on October 22nd. A request for supplemental information was then issued on April 12th, 2021, and a supplemental filing was then submitted on June 2nd. An IAG meeting was held in relation to that filing on June 23rd, followed by a public meeting on June 30th, with the comment period closing on July 6th of 2021. The project has gone through Boston Civic Design Commission review and was approved by the BCDC on September 7th, 2021. And I will now turn it over to Joe Hanley, the attorney for the development team, to advance the presentation.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Secretary Paulimis, Director Golden, Attorney Joe Hanley, McDermott, Quilty, Miller. I am here representing Cornerstone Real Estate, Adam Sarba, who's the proponent. Also with us is Nidhi John from Prowitz Chilinsky Architects, who will take you through the presentation. Before she does, I just want to say a few words of thanks to the BPDA senior staff and urban design, members of the IAG, and our direct abutters, who we have been working very closely with over 2 years for this community-based residential revitalization of approximately 1.3 acres in back of South Bay in North Dorchester. We were very excited about the benefits and the community contributions that are going into this project at this location. And with that, I'll ask Nidhi John to take you through the presentation. Thank you. Nidhi?
Thanks, Joe. Madam Chair, members of the board, my name is Nidhi John. I'm the architect at Prowitz Chilinsky Associates, and would love to get the presentation started. It's a short 9-slide presentation. Next, please. This, Joe, I think, spoke to the slide, so we can keep moving to the next one. This is an overview of the last few months of the process with the BPDA, as well as the BCDC Commission. As a result, the following slides will show you what it looks like, but it's 3 different buildings. As you can see, buildings are B1, B2, and B3. This is in the South Bay Shopping Center area, which was recently developed by the Eden's property buildings. The 4 highlights for this project were, 1, the building heights were reviewed about to match with the recent developments in the area. Massing reduced from all 3 buildings. The team was able to add more open space, 2 open spaces, actually 2 parklets, 1 in front of building 2 and 1 in front of building 1. And lastly, we had a big programmatic change, which basically converted the building that says B1. It's a fully condominium building with 99 units of home ownership. Next, please. These are just a few existing photos of what the site looks like today. The 3 red markings are the actual 3 parcels, basically 13 original parcels that were assembled. And as you can see from the photos, you can tell the overhead telephone poles. There's about 11 telephone poles that we are making underground for this whole project. The highlight for this project is basically the public realm. The sidewalks today are between 3 feet and 2 feet, and we are making them 10-foot sidewalks. Adding landscaping, we are giving a good chunk of our property off to make the roads wider and to allow for the sidewalks to be wider, because our sites are in a good position to be able to help the larger community. Next, please. This is an overall massing model to just give a sense of what the buildings are and how they're spatially placed against everything. Next. And as you can tell, buildings B1 and B2 are the 6-story buildings, and building 3, which is a little one, is the 4 stories, which kind of ends the street. So there's a bunch of streets that these buildings affect, about 4 or 5 streets. Willow Court and Baker Court, which you can't see because it's between the words building 2 and the actual building. But we can run through the plans, we'll show you perfect. So on the left that you see is building B1, which is a condominium building. The one in the middle, B2, is rental. And the last building on the right, which is B3, is also rental. So that adds up to the 191 units. You'll see we focused on making sure we had enough 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, along with studios and 1 beds for this area. We worked with the accessibility department at the Bpda, as well as the Bpda folks internally, to understand the limitations and to make sure that we had good clearance with streets. We worked with the Boston Fire Department to make sure that we addressed everybody's concerns in terms of just accessibility onto the site. Today, the way it works is where you see the words building B3, the street ends there and there's no neighborhood connectivity to the larger neighborhood. So the goal of this project is to add trees, and you would have noticed from the pictures, there are no trees in this site right now. We are looking to add a lot of streetscape, landscape, and better public realm across the board on 3 streets. Next, please. This is a landscaping plan that just gives a sense of, like, when I talked about public space and open space, we looked at adding 2 public parklets. One you can see, which is in near building B2, in that area which says Baker Court at the top. And then at the bottom where you see Enterprise Street, which is building 1. So we looked at creating more public spaces for the neighborhood where people can come and hang out and sit. We have widened the sidewalks, as I mentioned. We have a 15-dock blue bike station that will be beneficial for the neighborhood. And as I mentioned, new trees on both sides of the streets, all along Willow Court, the vertical one, as well as Baker Court, the horizontal one. Next, please. And now we have just a few views of each of the buildings and what it means at the entrance, just to give you a sense of what the experience is in this area. This is building 2, which is the building that connects 2 streets. And we were looking at how we could add landscaping and public streets. And we have a drop-off and pickup area in this neighborhood, which we met with the neighborhood many times in the last few years. And we talked about what the neighborhood needed as an amenity, and drop-off pickup locations for the neighborhood were one of those things that we maintained on the site. So that's why you kind of see the car next to the stroller. That's as a place for the drop-off pickup. But this is building 2. The next slide, you'll get a sense for the other 2 buildings as well. This is building 1, which is the tail end. It's the last parcel along Baker Court. It abuts a driveway, which is near the Eden's parking garage. So you kind of see the parking garage in the distance, but the goal was to match the existing context in the neighborhood. So this is 4-story buildings on that side, so we made sure we matched it in, and we're talking about how to liven up the street. The words mural are to indicate that we would have some kind of a mural, as that is the street that turns to the South Bay Shopping Center. So you want to make sure that activated the pedestrian life. Next, please. This is the last slide where it kind of gives you a sense of the building, the condominium building, which is building 1. To our left is Mass Ave. The street that you see in front of us is Enterprise Street. And like I was talking about the public realm space, we have made sure we shifted that we basically gave a good chunk of the property for building 1 on the left. So you can see the road looks really wide. It was intentionally that way so that we could add landscaping for the neighbors on the opposite end too. So the road felt more balanced for the greater good of the neighborhood. That basically ends the presentation that we had. And the last slide was again the highlights of the project. Sorry if I breezed through quickly. I'm happy to go back to any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Nidhi. Thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes our presentation.
Yeah,
Thank you, everyone.
Great job, Nidhi. It was a perfect amount of time, enough detail and enough broad strokes. So, and just really like the addition of the green space and the, given that we are, definitely take a climate justice lens, like to the work that we're doing. It's something that is, again, top of mind when we're building in these already kind of, dense neighborhoods that don't have a lot of green space. So just lovely to see. Questions or comments from the board?
Just a comment, could you go back to your second slide, the aerial view of the overall neighborhood? And in some respects, this echoes the chair's comments.
Page 5, Dr. Landsmark, I think.
Yeah, there's one that's even a broader view than this. Yeah, that one. This area for a long time has been really an environmental disaster in terms of environmental justice. As far as I know, the parking lot at South Bay does not have permeable paving. The area is surrounded by heavy traffic. The Amtrak line runs through it by the T there. And this is an area where there's going to be a lot more residential housing going in over the next few years. And my comment is to commend and thank the proponent and the design team here for taking a step towards making this area much more environmentally friendly. The plantings, the sidewalk widths, the overall design element that you've put into what is not intrinsically a very large area as such, I hope becomes much more of a precedent for other developers, particularly residential developers in this area. And I want to thank the staff and all of the folks who are taking a step towards improving the environmental quality of this area. We've got a couple of areas like this in the city, but this one is, I think, particularly egregious, particularly because it brings so much pollution into a neighborhood, which is not that far from the waterfront, and certainly not that far from downtown, and is surrounded by communities that don't have a lot of wealth. And I view this as an asset. So I'm hoping that there's a message that's sent by this development to other folks who intend to develop residential properties in this area, that we really want to see a level of environmental justice implemented here.
Thank you, Dr. Landsmark and Madam Chair. That was beautifully said.
All right, any additional questions or comments? Okay, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Congratulations, good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Item number 18, request authorization to issue a scoping determination, waiving the requirement of further review pursuant to Article 80, Section 80B5-3D of the zoning code for the Cheney Street Apartments project consisting of 59 affordable senior rental units, 15 affordable homeownership units, 5,500 square foot community center, and 34 parking spaces located at 4 through 18 Cheney Street, and to take all related actions. Lance.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Director Golden, Madam Secretary. I just want to note for the board that this project is seeking funding from Department of Neighborhood Development and also from DHCD. And the project was filed by the Jamaica Plain Neighborhood Council. Jamaica Plain Neighborhood Development Corporation. The project is located outside of, located at 4-18 Cheney Street, 24 Cheney Street, and 3-5 Schuyler Street in Roxbury, outside of Grove Hall. The project consists of 75,000 gross square feet of development, including 74 units. 59 are designated senior rentals and 15 home ownership units, 9 of which will be located at 24 Cheney Street, all 3-bedroom flats. 6 more will be located at 3-Schuyler, all 2-bedroom flats. The senior building unit mix consists of 57 1-bedroom units and 2 2-bedroom units. A program for all-inclusive for elderly/PACE center measuring 1,700 square feet, including a total of 34 new parking spaces, 28 of which will be located at grade below the senior building, while 6 spaces will be located at 3-5 Schuyler. For the rental building, the senior rental building, the IDP percentages will be ranging from 30%, 50%, and 60% of AMI. Jonathan Garland, the project architect, will give a brief overview of the proposed project, and the project representatives are available to answer any questions from the board. Jonathan, I think you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you, Lance. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm Jonathan Garland with J. Garland Enterprises, Architecture and Design. I'd like to ask Ricky if she'd like to introduce the project on behalf of the JPNDC.
Hi, good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm Ricky Guerra here representing JPNDC. So JPNDC acquired the site back in 2019 and began a community process back then. Through housing visioning sessions in the community, we settled on a program that had 2 types that you'll see in our presentation. So an affordable rental senior model and affordable homeownership opportunities for new homeowners that are at or below, or between 80 and 100% AMI. So the first slide is just an overview of the project. So as Lance mentioned, we will have 59 senior rental units, 15 home ownership opportunities. We also have a partnership with the Ovens Corner PACE Center and hope to have a PACE alternative care center on the ground floor. We can go, I think, to the next slide. So the project is located in the Grove Hall neighborhood. I think the next slide actually has a little bit more detail. Next slide, please. So this is a better picture of the site. So the site consists of 3 different sites. 4-18 Cheney Street, which is currently an abandoned automotive garage, 24 Cheney Street, and 3-5 Schuyler Street, both of which are vacant lots. Next slide, please. So at 24 Cheney Street, we are proposing 9 residential units for first-time homeownership for families at 80 to 100% AMI. At 3-5 Schuyler Street, we are proposing 6 residential units, all 2-bedroom flats for families at 80 to 100% AMI. And at 4 to 18 Cheney Street, we are proposing 59 senior rental apartments, all at or below 60% AMI, with 31% of those actually serving family or seniors that are at or below 30% AMI. Next slide. Jonathan?
Thank you, Ricky. So this is showing the more of an up-close zoom-in of the 59-unit senior building. Looking at the image to the right-hand side, you can see the lobby space as well as the units that are in orange and the pay center that is in the pink color. We really wanted to take care with Cheney Street, which is currently a one-way street, going down the page and will remain a one-way street. So we wanted to enhance the public realm by widening sidewalks, creating new street tree plantings as part of the public realm, and pushing the building further back away from the street to allow for ample circulation, setback space, and entry exit from the parking, which is sort of below grade because the site slopes up at an angle. We've also been able to incorporate a plaza event space, really a backyard, an ample backyard for the senior community, which will have great southern sunlight and the ability for privacy and security for the seniors. On the left-hand side, you can see both the parking plan in the yellow as well as the residential plan above. I will make note that, that the home ownership all has one-to-one parking. The 9-unit Cheney Street building is using the senior building for parking, and the Schuyler Street building has parking on its own site. Next slide. This is showing a perspective rendering from Cheney Street looking at the 59-unit senior building. A lot of the precedent that we took from the area was the use of the yellow buff brick, darker metal tones around the cornice lines, as well as a gray contrasting metal where you see the bay windows. So that, in collection with the trees and larger sidewalk space, we think really creates a nice contribution to this currently underutilized site. Next slide. This is showing another angle of that same front view, just looking down toward Blue Hill Avenue, and we're really working to negotiate the grading change as the site is sloping up from Blue Hill Ave toward Hartwell Street, which is at the top end of Cheney Street. Next slide. This is showing the two buildings in a pair next to each other. You have 4 to 18 Cheney on the left, and you have 24 Cheney on the right. So that's showing you sort of the full breadth of this neighborhood intervention, where the senior building is in the yellow and the home ownership building for family is in sort of it's a fiber cement building, but it has the look and feel of red brick, and that was intentional so that it can really pick up on the character of the street with bow fronts and an angular form, and each unit having its own direct entry off of Cheney Street. Next slide. So this is showing more of a zoom in of the 9-unit homeownership building. It does wrap the corner of Cheney and Hartwell Street. So we're using this bow front articulation to really wrap the corner. We're continuing the newly lined sidewalk with street trees along that edge. And as Lance mentioned earlier, this building is a collection of 9 3-bedroom flats, 3 units per floor. Next slide. And this is skipping over to 3 to 5 Schuyler Street, which is on the opposite sort of adjacent street edge there. And this really is taking cues from a lot of the larger Roxbury single-family homes that you are probably familiar with, the 6 to 8 bedroom homes. That was the genesis or the look and feel of the building, although it does house 6 independently owned 2-bedroom flats. It has the look and feel with gable ends and a lot of sort of evolution of the design happening on the front facade to animate it and make it look sculpturally interesting, like a lot of the other single-family homes on Schuyler Street. You can also see how we've tucked in the parking, the 6 spaces there, and have created a decent landscape edge buffer along the street. Next slide. And so I believe that concludes our presentation. Here is a summary, and we'd be open for any questions from the board. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Great presentation, Ricky and Jonathan. So questions or comments from the board?
I have one. First of all, I find the substance of the project that you're putting forward very appropriate for the time and the neighborhoods and the housing needs of the people of Boston at this moment. But I want to add to that a small comment. If you would go back to any one of the renderings that you put up, one of the early ones, I want to commend, yeah, that's a good one. I want to commend the development team for putting into this image people who are clearly seniors, they're clearly diverse, they're using different modes of transportation. Not every car that's rendered is a BMW or Mercedes. I just finished sitting on a jury, a design jury, where virtually all of the renderings showed people in Boston communities who looked like architecture school students, traditionally defined. And I, for one, would like to see more of these presentations like this one that show the real people who are living in Boston at this point, and not some version that came out of a designer's toolbox. So I commend the Jamaica Plain team and Jonathan Garland for not only coming up with a really nice design that clearly fits into the neighborhood, but also one that shows what Boston is and has become and will be into the future. And I think many more of the proponents who come before us ought to respond to the obligation of designing for the city that we have become and not the city we might have been once.
Thank you, Dr. Landsmark, for that comment. And I would just make mention that this project has been a collaborative joint venture between J. Garland Enterprises and Icon Architecture, who have been doing a really nice job on the senior building and are responsible for this image. But thank you for that comment.
Great, yeah, +1. It's funny, in my notes, I was like, it feels and looks like it fits. Like it felt like Boston. I couldn't quite figure out what it was, just the design architecture, but maybe picking up on what Dr. Landsmark was saying of just like kind of just seeing yourself represented and seeing the variety even in the imagery. Yeah, good points. And again, great job. And I really do like the design. It does, like, sometimes we're like, you know, picking up on the architecture of the street, right? And I'm like, well, does it? I don't really know. But this one really does feel like I can see and feel those elements, right, in those renderings, and, you know, can envision, you know, enlivening the neighborhood with new, while respecting that, you know, the history and the context, which is, I think, in our mission statement tagline or something somewhere. So it's a great presentation. Additional questions or comments from the board?
I'd just like to add, great job. I love the green space, and it truly does seem to fit into the neighborhood. So well done. If you added a couple of double parked cars, it might look more. So, but excellent. Good work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good stuff. All right. I think a motion is in order here.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs? Aye. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care. All right. Item number 19. Request authorization to issue a certification of approval in accordance with Article 80E, Small Project Review of the Zoning Code, to approve the change from 49 residential rental units to 49 home ownership units, including 7 IDP units located at 205 Maverick Street, and to take all related actions. McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Director Golden, and Madam Secretary. I'm McKenna Parker, a project assistant for development review. We are once again before you this evening to discuss the 205 Maverick Street project. As you may recall, this project was originally approved by the board in November of 2018. At this time, the project included approximately 60,000 square feet, comprised of 49 rental units. Tonight, we ask you to consider this project update, which was filed with the Bpda on June 22nd, 2021. This project update proposes a change in programming from rental units to condominiums. 205 Maverick Street remains at its previously approved size, The parking and retail components also remain unchanged from the 2018 approvals. Outside of the modified IDP obligation, which now includes 7 IDP units, all mitigation and community benefits associated with the project remain the same. A virtual public meeting was held on August 16th, where the project update was presented and discussed. The comment period ended on July 23rd. This will conclude my remarks. I'm happy to take any questions, but I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Nick Zazula and Joe Noguera from the development team, who are also available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Great, thanks, McKenna. Questions or comments from the board? All right, hearing and seeing none, the motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Lansmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 20. Request authorization to issue a certificate of completion to execute an amended and restated land disposition agreement with Ms. Shalom Assisted Living Facility, known as the Selma Lacy House, to reduce the 66 assisted living units to 48 affordable units located at 9 West School Street, and to approve the assignment and assumption of a subordinate loan from the BRA in the amount of $309,375, and to take all related action. Christopher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Madam Chair, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. My name is Chris Breen. I'm the Urban Renewal Special Project Manager for this project. The item before you is a proposed renovation with some changes to a 2004 project known as the Selma Lacy House, which for the past 17 years has been a 66-unit assisted living senior facility center with 33 income restricted rental units in a 43,000 square foot building located on parcel R-2A-2 along 9 West School Street in the Charlestown Urban Renewal Plan area. The project team representing the Selma Lacy House has a few requested actions. The first is a certificate of completion issuance to be done prior to the transfer of the building to new ownership. Myself and my colleague, senior architect Alexa Pinard, inspected the current site and found that it was completed in line with the prior plan submitted. Additionally, the project team have also subsequently requested to enter into an amended and restated land disposition agreement to properly reflect the changes coming to the project, the unit count, the affordability makeup, the use and the services available on site in the future. Lastly, the project team requests an approval of an assignment and assumption of a subordinate loan in the amount of $309,375. And they then seek to enter into a new affordability covenant or mass doc agreement for the continued affordability of this project. The Bpda co-hosted a public meeting back in June to discuss the proposed renovations, converting this Selma Lacy House to a 48 rental income restricted facility with minimal external changes. Following the public meeting, the project received relief at the July Zoning Board of Appeals with support coming from the Mayor's office, the Honorable At-Large City Councilor's office, City Councilor Flaherty's office, and the Mass Housing Organization. For more details about these proposed changes to the Selma Lacy House, Project Counsel Doherty is here to give a brief presentation and to answer any specific questions you may have. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Project Doherty or Attorney Joyce, if possible. I can help present.
Chris, I believe we promoted Mr. Doherty and given him the ability to unmute.
Okay.
And I think we promoted, or Kevin Joyce has the ability to unmute if he would like.
Yep, I see Attorney Joyce is unmuted. He's still listed as an attendee, but I can move forward if they cannot.
Attorney Joyce?
Yeah, I believe Attorney Doherty was to make the presentation. So is he on or?
He is on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. It's a little echo.
I apologize for my lack of technical abilities.
Yeah, Mr. Doherty, I think you're logged in on multiple devices.
I'll be right there.
I can move forward with the presentation if they're unable to. Just give it another second.
Hello?
Yep.
Yes, Chris, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
I apologize for
Nope.
lack of technical abilities here. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Ed Doherty, Lawrence Gerard F. Doherty from Boston, representing AHSC Selma Lacy LLC, the proposed developer of Selma Lacy House located on parcel R-2A-29 West School Street in Charlestown. The Selma Lacy House is a 3-story brick building containing 66 assisted living dwelling units, which 33 are income restricted. The building also contains related meeting, reception, recreation, dining, and medical management space, a senior daycare center, outdoor parking spaces, and landscaped open space. Selma Lacy opened in 2002 pursuant to a land disposition agreement between the current owner, Mishwam Assisted Living Associates, LLC, and the Bpda, successor of Boston Development Authority. Next slide, please. The location. Selma Lacy House is accessible to Interstate 93 and Route 1, City Square, and is well served by the MBTA's Boston Community College Rapid Transit Station and MBTA Bus Route 92. Since the current owner opened Selma Lacy House in 2004, the property has only been at full occupancy once in its 17-year history. Moreover, the building has been operating at a $1 million deficit for each of the past 4 years. This amounts to approximately $4 million in losses due to the high vacancy rates and the high expenses of operating the Selma Lacy House. The developer is proposing a complete interior renovation of the entire building at a cost of approximately $11 million and to change the building program from the assisted living model to a modern model of 48 100% income restricted dwelling units for seniors, with service to be provided by third-party providers for residents. With respect to concern about the potential relocation of existing tenants, the applicant has been actively engaged in communications with residents and their families about the proposed transition of services from a fully licensed assisted living facility to a senior independent living model with coordinated third-party services. We are committed to not displacing anyone. Our intention is to provide third-party coordination through PD Resident Services, PACE, and Boston Senior Home Care. We have partnered with Boston Senior Home Care to help us educate residents and families about the proposed post-renovation service model so they can confidently decide if the service model will work for them. In instances where residents have determined that they need a higher level of service than proposed and want to move, we've been assisting them with new placements and moving expenses to other assisted living facilities in the area. There are currently 17 residents residing in the building. Of those, 2 are scheduled to move out on September 30th, and 3 residents are currently supported by Bayco for in the process of completing applications and assessments to transfer to other assisted living facilities. Of the remaining 12 residents, 9 of the residents are evaluating other assisted living options. We will continue to help them once they've made the decision. The remaining 3 residents are consulted with the Boston Senior Home Care, and I've expressed an interest in returning to Selma Lacy post-construction and becoming a resident of the newly renovated property. We intend to work with our relocation consulting firm, Housing to Home, to ensure we are in compliance with the requirements of the Uniform Relocation Act and Mass General Law, Chapter 79A, relocation assistance. Next slide, please. The development team consists of Affordable Housing Services Collaborative, Inc., which is a major nonprofit in the area. The owners investors are Selma, Ground Lessor LLC, AHC, Selma Lacy LLC. The architects, the architectural team, law office of Gerard F. Doherty is the attorney. The contractor is NEI General Contracting, and the management company is Bpda Properties. AHSC has been involved in many complex affordable developments, including new construction as well as historic and occupied rehabilitation. AHSC President Mike Mattis is with me on the call today and is happy to answer any questions that you may have. Program changes comparisons. As this slide indicates, some of the most notable proposed changes to the building are reduction in the number of dwelling units from 66 to 48, 50% affordability, which is 33 units, will go to 100% affordability, 48 units, so we're increasing the amount of affordability. 100% of units will be income restricted to households earning at or below 60% of the area median income for Boston. The units will be broken down as follows. 7 of the units will be provided at 30% or less of AMI, 13 units will be provided at 50% or less of AMI, 28 units will be provided at 60% or less of AMI. The increase in the average dwelling unit will be from 300 square feet to 627 square feet. The 24-hour on-site facility service today will be changed to coordinated support services provided by third-party payers. Next slide, please. The proposed renovations, as slide 6 indicates, some highlights of the proposed renovations include reconfiguring interior walls to accommodate full-size units, modernizing the existing break room and club room for residents to enjoy, and installing environmental and sustainable improvements. Basically, the outside of the building will not really change, with the exception of windows and energy improvements. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. I'd like to thank the board members for allowing me the opportunity to present this afternoon. As I said, AHSC President Mike Mattis and James Podesky of the architectural team are with me on the call this afternoon. We're happy to answer any questions that the board may have for us. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
I have maybe a larger question beyond this property in and of itself. I mean, you've assembled a really good and sensitive team here, and I'm just curious, you have a really nice looking building in a terrific neighborhood with 66 units, only 17 of which seem to be occupied at this moment. So I have to assume that there must have been some changes in the marketplace or something that led to this high vacancy rate. I'm curious as to what caused that.
Well, I think there's a couple of questions, a couple of responses. Number one, as I said earlier, it was 66 units, 33 were income restricted and 33 were market. Frankly, the reimbursement rate on the income restricted never came close to covering the costs. In the market rents that had to be charged, which just didn't work in the marketplace. It became very obvious to Mass Housing and DHCD, which are present regulatory agencies and will be in the future, that it was better to switch to a different model. We've been actually successful in doing this when we took over a trouble project a number of years ago. We're providing supportive services to people. So it's basically a slightly lower level of services for than has been provided. It's not 24-hour assisted living. The existing owner has done everything they could over the last 4 years. They have covered all of the operating expenses at a cost of approximately $1 million a year, which is they just can't sustain. They're out of pocket the last 4 years of $4 million. And the decision was made in connection with the developer, with Mass Housing, and with the HCD to switch this new model. So we've been actively involved in the last 6 or 7 months between community meetings and actively relocating people, and that's why it is now down to 17 residents.
That's helpful, thank you.
Okay, additional questions or comments? All right, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Lansmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for my lack of technical ability.
Oh, no worries. It happens every meeting, at least 3 times.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so we still got a little bit of time, so we're going to skip over the public hearing portion. Item number 22 has been removed. Item number 23, contractual. I need a motion to pay our bills.
I move we pay our bills.
Second.
Okay, roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Please pay the bills. Secretary Polhemus, do we want to do director's update now or take a break before the public hearing?
If Director Golden is prepared, I think we have time to do it now.
Okay, Director Golden, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and through you to the members. Quick word about an earlier matter you approved in this evening's proceeding. Staff here in particular are thrilled with the board's approval of the Coastal Flood Resiliency Zoning Overlay District, which I think is a really important milestone in this city in the way we use our regulatory authority to address the demands of climate change and sea level rise and coastal flooding. It's the culmination of many years of effort that have seen significant changes in the planning and in the regulatory controls and ultimately the physical interventions that will occur throughout the city in vulnerable zones associated with sea level rise. So what the board's done tonight is require new development and retrofits of existing structures to take additional steps to limit the damage and displacement that is related to the impacts of coastal storms and sea level rise. And we all know that for Boston to grow and thrive for generations to come, we absolutely must take steps to ensure that buildings constructed today are resilient and protected from the impacts of climate change for decades to come. By updating our zoning code to go above and beyond the Federal Emergency Management Agency maps, Boston is now leading the way in not only preparing for the storms of today, but also the storms of tomorrow. We believe these new zoning rules go beyond what any other city in the nation is doing today to protect itself against the effects of climate change. We're looking in Boston to the future and aiming to protect buildings and infrastructure for the next generation of Bostonians while also increasing our collective resilience against climate change. And we also know that the most vulnerable communities in the city will bear the brunt of the impacts from climate change, which is why we are acting now with such urgency to prepare for the future. I want to thank our planning staff, especially Chris Bush and Rich McGinnis, for their efforts throughout the years on these important policy interventions. I also want to thank Brian Glasscock, our Deputy Director of Planning for Zoning, for the work he's put in to this important regulatory requirement. So thanks to all of them, the stakeholders they've worked with in government and outside of government for meeting the urgency of the moment. And I thank them for their extremely important work on this challenging issue that we will continue to manage for decades to come. This is another farewell, a difficult farewell. Another senior member of the staff has decided to depart, in fact, retire. A wonderful presence here for 15 years. Tad Reed, our Senior Deputy Director of Transportation and Infrastructure Planning, is retiring from the Bpda after 15 years of service to the agency. His retirement is official on October 1st. Tad has spent not only 15 years here serving the people of Boston, but he's provided significant, profound service to people not just on the East Coast, but on the West Coast. Tad served for several years in planning roles in the state of California before relocating to the East Coast. He went to work on Beacon Hill and in state government before joining us here at City Hall. He's worked on and led some remarkably important transformational projects here in the city during his long and successful career. Tad was a key member of the team working on Imagine Boston 2030, our first general city-wide plan since 1965, the first one since 65. Tad worked on Go Boston 2030, the Alston I-90 redesign, Fairmount line planning, the urban ring study, urban agriculture, the smart utilities vision, and the Alston-Brighton mobility study. Tad also served the agency and the people of Boston as interim director of planning for 1 year early in Mayor Walsh's administration. In all these important roles that Tad has played, he's always been eager to lend his perspective and his expertise to other city and BPDA projects and initiatives. He's connected at a really significant level with everybody he's worked with. We were also fortunate to have him here for the past 15 years. He's a delight to work with. His humor and his energy always raise the mood of any environment that he's in. He's respectful, warm, intelligent, funny. And people in this agency and in our neighborhoods always appreciated working with him. I always heard that about Tad, both within the building and outside the building. He really has been a great blessing to this organization and to the city of Boston. So I want to say simply congratulations to Tad Reed on his retirement. Thank you, Tad, for the role you've played in helping to create one of the great cities of the world. Your work will continue to benefit the people of Boston for generations to come, and we will all miss you dearly. So good luck and farewell, Tad Reed. Finally, tonight, a significant amount of activity, 265 total residential units before the board. Over 100 of the matters before you tonight are income restricted. The total value of the projects before you tonight, over $100 million, and hundreds of jobs are involved with the matters that are being presented this evening. I know we're still heading into the public hearings, but I just wanted to call attention to the important work that's going on here tonight with the variety of planning and development initiatives. And with that, thank you, and I look forward to the rest of the evening. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Dr. Golden, and on behalf of the board, congratulations on your retirement. Tad, really appreciative of all of your contributions to the city, and we'll continue to build on the foundations that you've set. So hope you have a great retirement. Great. Okay, so we still have one more item left on the agenda, and that is our public hearing. So switch the screens here, and let's get started with that. This is a public hearing before the Boston Redevelopment Authority, doing business as the Boston Planning and Development Agency, being held in conformance with Article 80D of the Boston Zoning Code, to consider the Boston Medical Center Institutional Master Plan. This hearing was duly advertised on September 1st, 2021 in the Boston Herald. This is a Bpda hearing on a proposed petition by the agency. Staff members will first present their case and are subject to questioning by members of the agency. Thereafter, anyone who wishes to testify about the proposed project will be afforded an opportunity to do so. We are taking support and opposition at the same time. If you're planning to testify, please take time now to verify that your computer microphone is active. Click on the hand icon on your Zoom control panel, and this will signal to the staff that you would like to speak. When your hand is raised, it will be blue. If you're calling into the meeting and would like to testify, please dial *9 to raise your hand. When I call for all testimony, staff will announce your name and allow you to speak. You must unmute your microphone, and your webcam will not be active. In an effort to accommodate all who would like to speak about this proposal, each person will be given up to 2 minutes to comment. BPDA staff will indicate when 30 seconds remain. At that time, please conclude your remarks so the hearing may continue and others may be heard. At the conclusion of all oral testimony, any emailed testimony will be read aloud. And finally, the proponents are allowed a period of 5 to 10 minutes for rebuttal if they so desire. Edward Carmody will now begin the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the members of the board, Madam Secretary, and Director Golden as well. The proposal before you is the Boston Medical Center Institutional Master Plan for the years 2021 through 2031. The IMP covers the development goals of the hospital campus, concentrated in the South End neighborhood for the next 10 years. There are several projects with zoning approval that are being carried forward from the previous IMP and have not yet been built. Notably, the IMP also includes 2 main new projects seeking zoning approval under this master plan, with the intent that each would come forward for more detailed large project review at some point over the next decade. These include the 10 Stoughton Street Research Building and the Collimore Old Evans renovation for mixed-use housing, a proposal which includes affordable supportive housing for medically complex patients. The review process on this IMP began nearly 2 years ago in the fall of 2019. After hearing from the community in regards to their first proposal, particularly from abutting neighbors on residential East Brookline Street, BMC removed a proposed building from its campus perimeter that would have impacted these residents and moved those functions interior to its campus. The Community Task Force and the BPDA appreciate BMC's willingness to engage residents and then refine their master plan accordingly based on community feedback. Neighbors have also appreciated BMC's recent explanation of its specific intentions for the supported housing component in the IMP. Particularly in light of COVID-19, I commend the hospital for all the work they continue to do to support our most vulnerable populations, largely those who are uninsured or underinsured, and we believe that commitment is reflected in this master plan for the next decade. With that said, I'll now turn it over to Ramon Soto to begin the presentation, and then we will be happy to hear from any members of the public and take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. Can you hear me? Okay, great. All right, and thank you, Madam Chair, and to the members. We greatly appreciate this opportunity to present what is a culmination, as Eddie mentioned, a culmination of 2 years of work by our BMC team members, consultants, as well as numerous conversations with the city and our neighbors and community stakeholders. My name is Ramon Soto. I'm the Director of Government Advocacy at BMC. I'm joined by my colleague, Dr. Megan Sandel, our architect, Rick Kobus, and our project manager, Christy Dowd. Actually, Eddie, if you could just go back a slide, I had started with a little bit of a connection to these numbers. So for this first slide, we wanted to highlight the connections to the connections between BMC and our community, which make our healthcare institution especially unique and impactful. This past year, we've been very focused around housing and its impact on health. And with the help of a major grant from JP Morgan Chase, we've been successful in creating 30 affordable supportive housing units. We also employ over 3,000 Boston residents. We invest approximately $12.5 million annually in community programs that ensure healthcare access for underserved populations. And this past May, the New York Times featured BMC in an article titled "How Hospitals Can Help Patients and the Planet," which noted how BMC has reduced its greenhouse gas emissions by 90%. Achieving these important milestones goes back to our mission. Eddie, if you could advance to the next slide. Exceptional care without exception. We believe that this applies not only to the expert care that our doctors and nurses and social workers and all of our team members provide within our walls, but that also extends outside of our walls to the communities we serve. Next slide. And that's what brings us here today. I wanted to talk very quickly about the purpose and goals of the plan that we bring before you today, which really specifically revolves around the redesign of healthcare models in order to integrate medical, behavioral, and social needs of our patients. And what that requires is some accommodations in terms of increasing patient volume, as well as right-sizing and modernizing the clinical spaces that are just not at where the clinical standards demand them to be. We also want to leverage the highest and best use of our resources, both owned and leased, and incorporate the important lessons we've learned from the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide. So what have we learned? Number one, our inpatient units need more space. The surge of inpatients has highlighted the need to add beds. In terms of outpatient, we also have learned that the introduction of telehealth has actually tempered the need to expand outpatient space within our facilities. Also, research has proven, with everything that's happened in the last 2 years with regard to the COVID vaccine, we've learned that the people that we serve, which are highly underrepresented, underserved, are also underrepresented in research clinical trials. And we've also learned a lot about housing through COVID and the important need to improve access to safe and affordable housing options, especially to those with complex medical needs. Next slide. So that led us to have a lot of conversations, including over a half dozen with the community, where we were able to explain the different components of the plan, as well as listen and incorporate that feedback, which included a change from our initial plan to removing the ramp parcel project, because we listened to the neighbors, we understood them on the disruption it would cause, and we shifted our plan as a result. We also are continuing to engage our partners and neighbors in the community, as well as our friends at Boston University. And with that, I think I'm going to pass it to Rick. If you could move it to the next. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure. Myself, forgive me. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, and Ramon, thank you very much. I want to reiterate something that Eddie said earlier. This is an institutional master plan update. It is for the years 2021 to 2031. We are seeking approval of our institutional master plan and zoning approval only under Article 80D for site, use, massing, and height. The zoning approval is focused on new building volumes only, two of which are over 100,000 square feet. Our new clinical research building at 10 Stoughton Street, and the reuse of Collmore and Old Evans, two turn-of-the-century buildings, 102,000 square feet, for mixed market, affordable and supportive housing. We also have one project under 50,000 square feet a 9th floor addition to the existing Menino inpatient pavilion. And we have two smaller projects, the Yawkey 6th floor addition, which allows us to fill out the full floor plate of the Yawkey 6th floor and convert that floor to inpatient beds, and the Menino Yawkey lobby addition, which recognizes the integration of the Menino building and the Yawkey building as the principal inpatient facilities of Boston Medical Center. Next slide, please. Just to orient you to our campus a little bit, Boston Medical Center is shown in the purple tone. Boston University Medical School, Dental School, and School of Public Health are shown in the blue tone. The main entrance for Boston Medical Center is shown in the arrow to the right off of Harrison Street. Main entrance to the medical school is shown off the green space to the right at BU. These connective green spaces are an important element of our campus. They actually connect to the South End community, and they also feature many of our historical buildings on the campus. They also create a significant identity and a place of respite for our neighbors as well as for our staff. That played a very important role during the pandemic. Next slide, please. Projects that we're requesting approval or addition to our existing institutional master plan are the expansion of the Yawkey 6th floor, Menino Yawkey lobby addition, shown as B. C is the 9th floor addition to the Menino pavilion. D is the mixed-use affordable and supportive housing at the Collimore Old Evans building. And E is our clinical research building, which we moved from a site on Albany Street at the request of our neighbors adjacent to the East Brookline neighborhood. Next slide. An aerial view of these shows the same additions, the view from the south end looking towards South Bay. And so the first blue mass, 10 Stoughton Street, and then the Menino addition, the Menino Yawkey lobby, the Yawkey addition, and then we have two projects that we're carrying forward from our previous IMP, which are the new clinical and administration building on Albany Street and the new inpatient phase 2 building on the corner of Albany and Avenue. Next slide. Transportation is not greatly impacted by these changes. We've actually reduced the number of ambulance trips on Albany Street by 10,000 each year. We've greatly improved traffic circumstances on Albany Street, eliminating curb cuts, simplifying and moving the emergency drop-off off the main street, and consolidating loading and service to the south side of Albany Street, also moved off of the street. The proposed IMP 5-year projects actually projects fewer annual trips to the campus. The 10-year projects project about 97 additional vehicles in the AM peak and 113 vehicles in the PM peak. As you can see, they're very modest numbers. And this is in part because most BMC employees commute by walk, bike, or other and public transportation. Relatively few actually use private automobiles to come to the campus. And we will work with our employees to continue to improve the transportation demand management programs, try to maintain or maybe even improve our employee mode share. We will improve the Menino and Moakley pickup drop-off areas as part of the lobby addition so that we eliminate any backups that may occur occasionally on Harrison Street, and no new parking is needed as a result of these projects. Next slide. And here I'm going to turn this over to Megan.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I just wanted to spend a minute just talking about why this master plan meets our goal objective around redesigning healthcare models to integrate medical and behavioral and social needs of our patients. For those that aren't familiar, Boston Medical Center serves more than half of our patients come from underserved populations who rely on government payers such as Medicaid, the Health Safety Net, and Medicare for coverage. We provide multidimensional care, including 70+ specialties on site. We are the teaching site for Boston University School of Medicine, and we do world-class research out of our population. And I want to just note that we, through our interpretation services, serve over 250 languages over 24 hours a day. Next slide. We have used our campus during COVID because we saw the COVID response. And so we reopened actually a side of our campus that we had sold to the state to serve as a COVID recuperation unit for homeless and patients with COVID-19 who are not safe to return to homeless shelters. Next slide. And we have continued with our COVID response with an eye towards equity. So I just want to note that across the state, over 4 million COVID vaccine doses have been done. But if you look at the COVID vaccine doses that Boston Medical Center has done, over 100,000 in the city of Boston, we have disproportionately targeted high-risk populations, such as our Black and Latinx populations, serving 4 times and 1.5 times in those groups. We're really trying to look to this IMP as a way to give us that flexibility to be able to continue to serve the community. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Ramon Soto to wrap up our presentation. Thank you.
So thank you again.
Next slide, sorry.
Actually, one last comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's okay. So as you can see, members of the board, we have significant healthcare ambitions that continue to serve the populations of Boston in a unique and very friendly way, and modest facility changes that are required over the next 10 years to continue to support the patient. Thank you for your time. We appreciate that. We'd welcome to take any questions you have. Next slide.
Okay, so does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Perfect.
That's it.
All right, so before we start the public testimony, do we have any questions or comments from the board before we open it up to the public? Okay, hearing and seeing none, Secretary Polhemus, do we have anyone who would like to testify?
If you'd like to testify, please raise your virtual hand, please. Madam Chair, I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any email testimony that needs to be read into the record?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, perfect. Opening it up to one last time to questions or comments from the board.
I had one question. Thank you so much for all the work you do. And I was curious how you would reduce the ambulance visits on Albany Street 10,000 per year. Does that mean you just rerouted them in a different direction, or what was that about?
Who wants to answer that? Ramon, Rick, or myself? Who wants to take it?
Christy, why don't you start?
Sure. If you recall, 10 years ago, one of the big goals from the last master plan was to consolidate the 2 separate campuses on the East Campus clinical side, which is Newton Pavilion, and the West Campus, and improve the operations by consolidating all emergency department care and key inpatient care to the west side. So a combination of consolidating the campus to the west and strategically reusing that existing square footage, as well as improving how patients are brought from the helipad over to the main clinical area, into the ED and the inpatient facility, by taking those patients through the transport bridge that you now see, that it replaced the yellow utility tube. That significantly reduced that traffic on Albany Street and eliminated a huge need for ambulance trips between the East Clinical Campus and the West Campus, as well as between the helipad and the emergency department.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments?
Just one comment, and that is essentially that I'm not sure that that we as a planning agency can ever do enough to support the work you do. BMC for decades and decades and decades has been viewed as the place in town that serves the neediest patients. But I don't think a lot of people understand that you have also developed specializations over the years without regard to people's economic means. When other hospitals in town didn't want to take certain kinds of patients without saying so explicitly, who were ethnically diverse, even apart from economic status. BMC was there and developed a number of very important specializations in treatment and care. And in your looking at new models, I mean, we've certainly learned over the last couple of years how much healthcare has to change and is changing to meet larger environmental and social needs. And I, for one, as a person who worked in City Hall with BMC, know how difficult it is for a medical center alone to address all of the needs of the people in the city. I just want to commend you for the work that you've been doing, and hope that as administrations change and the like, that you get the kind of wider support that you need to be as creative as you're going to need to be over the course of this 10-year master planning process.
On behalf of my colleagues, thank you so much, Mr. Landsmark, for those comments. Thank you.
Great. No, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Landsmark. I definitely +1 echo everything that you said. And, personally, I am very appreciative of the care that BMC has given to my family and to communities I identify with. So I'm exceptional care without exception. You guys do that, and I am super thankful. All right, so if there are no further questions and comments from the board, I believe a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, and congratulations. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Perfect. There you go. Okay, well, that was, those were all of the agenda items that we had for today. So a motion is in order. I need a motion to adjourn the meeting. I need.
I move we adjourn the BPDA meeting.
Second.
All right, roll call for a vote. Ms. Downs?
Aye.
Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Meeting adjourned. Have a great month, everyone, and we'll see you soon.